So, ladies and gentlemen, hello. Hello, good evening from Chania in Crete. Good evening from the European University of Athena. I can see a few colleagues of mine, in this European Alliance, like Tatiana, Vitali. I don't know if other people are hidden among the audience. I would like to thank you very much, all the colleagues from all over the world, colleagues from HMU like Evi, Nikos, Yorgos, Arben, a friend from Kosovo, Elif from Turkey, other people from Turkey. We are a multinational kind of audience. Also, our speaker comes from another continent this week, from the United States. We are very glad that we have this week and next week, we are hosting the York College in Pennsylvania, a US institution that they are gurus, or they are one of the innovators in order to apply what my colleague Karin will present you in a short while, design thinking, as a way of teaching, as a way of interacting with the students. I have followed 2 workshops during their stay until now here in Crete, and I was very much impressed by the way the students they interact, and I hope that me and my colleagues as academics, we are going to realize this technique and we are going to experiment in order to make it better as we apply it during our lectures. Karin is here, is like a member of staff of York College in Pennsylvania. She's one of the main instructors in design thinking. I will leave the floor to Karin to explain to us and describe to us, this kind of framework and this kind of pedagogy for the next 45 to 50 minutes. So thank you very much again. Thank you very much, Karin, for the kind acceptance to make one more presentation regarding this technique. Thank you very much, and the floor is yours.
All right. Well, I think, all right, sorry, we are in the same office, so there's a bit of feedback here. But as Kosta said, my name is Karen Swartz. I am the Assistant Dean for the Center for Community Engagement at York College. And what that means is that my office works with our community that surrounds our college, and we do research together with community organizations and community partners, and we include the community in our classes. So an organization or business might say, we need help with marketing, and a marketing class could help them, or they might need help understanding a public health issue, and our students will work with the people that live around our institution to address that issue. So we help facilitate those experiences for our students and for our community. One of the things that I get to do as part of that job is work with our Engaged Scholars Honors community. These are our honors students at York College, and they use design thinking, which is what we'll be talking about today. So I am going to start this.
I cannot see. Did you share your screen?
Yeah, I'm trying.
Okay, let me do it. So they can see this.
Yes. All right. So before we get started, I just want to tell you a little bit about my university so that as I'm speaking, you can understand kind of what I'm talking about. We are located in Pennsylvania in the United States. We're about 2 hours from Philadelphia, 3 hours from New York City, so along the East Coast. We have about 4,000 students at our institution, and they are mostly residential students. So they live on campus or very close to campus. We were founded in 1787, so we've been around for quite a while. And you can kind of see a few photos from our students. We have lots of athletic teams, student organizations, and a lot of different majors. So we have over 70 majors, 70 areas of study that we offer to our students, as well as a few master's programs, mostly in the business and nursing areas, as well as public policy and education. And then we have one doctoral degree that we offer. So that's just sort of an overview of York College. I'm hoping that maybe to start, we could use the chat feature. And if you could just add into the chat what the word design means to you. So before I tell you about design thinking, tell me what you think design means. Plan something. Anyone else have ideas? Sketch something new. To plan, create something new. Make things easy for others to understand. Any other tailor-made solutions to create, to plan something innovative, develop something new, reshape? These are great responses. So, you know, what I'm seeing as you're adding these to give life to something, to provide a new solution, they all center around this idea of creativity and innovation. And that is something we like to talk about and focus on quite a bit. So to give life to something, yes, exactly. Provide a new solution to a given problem. So keep thinking along those lines. So design doesn't have to be, you know, just what we already know, but the idea to innovate, the idea to reimagine what we need to know to create. So hopefully you'll see throughout the next 30 minutes or so how we can start to innovate and start to think differently. One of my favorite things about design thinking is that it teaches you to think differently, and doing anything differently is hard. Change is hard for everyone. I don't know about your institutions, but I think especially in higher education in the United States, change is very hard. And so design thinking helps us better understand and better change in a way that is useful. All right, so we'll keep going here. So what you see now in front of you is the design thinking process. There are 5 steps, and though it looks pretty linear as it is, there are lots of times that you go back and revisit another step. So, you know, first we empathize. And when we talk about empathy and empathy interviewing, what we mean by that is getting to understand others and being able to put ourselves in their shoes and understand their stories. You'll hear me talk about stories quite a bit because that is the basis for design thinking. The next step is the define step. And in define, we try to get a better idea of what we're actually looking for and who we're trying to help. And then ideate, that's brainstorming, thinking about ideas and creating possibilities and building off one another. From there, it goes into prototyping, which is creating a model of some sort. And then we test and we see if our idea works. And sometimes it works and we're done. And other times it doesn't work. And we go back to ideate and say, how can we make it work better? And then we re-prototype and then we test again. And then we keep going back. So in reality, there are lots of arrows on this slide. There are from test to ideate to prototype and back again until we have a product that fits the needs of the user. So the definition of design thinking, it's a process that starts with the people that you're designing for. A lot of times it's also called human-centered design. And it's about, as I said, cultivating a deep empathy with people that you're designing with, generating ideas, building prototypes, and then sharing what you've made together and putting a new innovative idea out into the world. We use empathy to address the needs of an individual. So there's also this concept called universal design, and that is when you design something for everyone. So you might use universal design to design an entrance to a building that is a ramp. So someone in a wheelchair could use the ramp, and someone that is walking could also use the ramp. That would be an example of universal design. Design thinking looks for the extreme user. So we look for the person that is using the item or the idea more than anyone else, and we design for them. And then that means that it works better for everyone else that uses it a little bit less. The idea is to solve for an individual to benefit the greater population. So empathize, as I said, is the first step. Empathy is the ability to sense other people's emotions, coupled with the ability to imagine what someone else might be thinking or feeling. We do this through what we call empathy interviews, and they're really more of a conversation, but they almost always start with, tell me about a time, or tell me a story about. We never ask yes or no questions that will end our conversation. We always want to know more about the person. And we don't ask, well, what do you need, right? The idea is to hear a story about their experience and pull the need out of the story. So to listen to what their experience is and to infer from there what the actual need is. We talk a lot about the 9 whys. So this is an exercise that we do with our students in class often. We'll have them stand up and find a partner, and they speak with their partner, and one of them asks a question. So maybe our students that are here in Greece with us today, we might say, so why did you come to Greece? And they might respond with, well, because my class is coming to Greece. Why is your class coming to Greece? So you keep turning it back on the person, asking why again and again and again, 9 times, so that you can really get a deeper insight to what they're saying. And oftentimes that requires them to really think beyond what they've thought about or reflected on previously. And that is the most important part. When we do empathy interviews, we look for the spark. And that is something that, you know, as you practice these interviews, it gets easier and easier. But think about a conversation you had with a friend or a family member, and, you know, you're just asking them, how was your day? What did you do at work? You know, things that are maybe not as exciting to them. But when you ask them that question about their favorite basketball team or their favorite shop that they got to go to, and they kind of light up and they get really excited because that's something that means a lot to them, that's the spark that we're looking for. And that's where we want to keep asking those why questions, so we can see deeper into their excitement. And the final thing I'll say about empathy interviews is we embrace the silence. So if many of you are instructors or are faculty members, I'm sure you've had the silence in your classes before, but you ask a question and a couple of people answer and no one's really getting to that deep answer you're looking for. If you let people sit in silence, eventually someone will say it, right? It happens the same when you're speaking one-on-one with a person. You ask them questions and they give you the answer that they think you want. And then if you kind of give them just a few more moments, they might eventually say something really important. And often that last piece, the information after the silence, is some of the most valuable information. So we try to do our best to embrace the silence. That's not something that's easy for humans, I think all humans, but definitely Americans to do. So that is an important thing to us. So I'm wondering if maybe I could have a volunteer. I'd like to just demonstrate a very short empathy interview so you can get a feel for what that looks like. Is anyone willing to unmute and chat with me for a moment? We are both muted now. Okay, sorry, was there someone that is willing to speak with me?
I can speak, but we are going to have a problem with the microphone. Ask Ioannis didactic.
Yes, I can speak with you, of course.
Okay, thank you, Ioannis. I appreciate it. So, Ioannis, tell me where are you from? Where are you now?
I'm from Crete. Now I'm in Heraklion.
So you're in Heraklion?
Yeah, in Heraklion.
Okay.
Probably I will be there today, but unfortunately, some jobs don't allow me to be there. So I'm in Heraklion.
Okay. And do you work there at HMU?
Yeah.
What do you teach?
I'm industrial design engineer, so one of my courses is design thinking and industrial design lectures. I focus on how to design new products and machine, of course, because I'm in mechanical engineering department. So we have also to design machines, but also and products.
Okay. So could you tell me about one of your designs?
For example, we try to make simple things in the beginning, so students to understand the design thinking process. And as you said before, human-centered design is the most important thing. And students, it's not easy to understand from the beginning how important it is. Also, you said about universal design. They think that universal design is for people, just for some people, not for all the people, and they don't understand how important it is to design products for all the people. And if you design a product for people with some incapabilities, this product will be better for all people. There are so many examples of successful design products and companies who design for all people. For example, OXO company. Maybe you know OXO company. It's the motto of OXO company is soft grips. It's the company who design soft grips for people who have a problem with their fingers. They can't catch easily. So their products come bestseller products because they design something better, and these help more and more people finally. Not only people with some capabilities.
All right, well, thank you. I just wanted to demonstrate a short little interview, but it's really exciting that you're also using human-centered design and design thinking in your work and with your students. And I hope that we get to chat more about that later.
Okay, thank you.
So I am going to share once again. So the image you see, the pirate ship image you see on the screen is an example of hearing a story and really understanding the underlying need. So this is a piece of medical equipment, CT scans. So people lay on the bed and go into the machine and it scans their body. Well, when children were going into this machine, it makes a lot of noise and it's kind of scary for them. And so there was a hospital administrator who developed this brand new machine, the best machine possible. They were so proud of it. And a few kids went through and they were terrified, they were crying, and they were very upset. And you know, the person that designed the machine spoke with the families and said, what's wrong? Why is it so scary? And they said, well, because it's really loud. And the designer thought how he could make the machine more quiet. How could he make the machine less scary for the children? And to make the machine more quiet would be a huge engineering undertaking, right? So they would have to completely redesign pieces and it would cost a lot of money because they had already started production. And instead, he said, well, it's just scary because it's loud, but what else might be loud and okay for kids? And he thought about like a ride at an amusement park. So he said, what if we make it more like a ride where the students think, hey, this isn't so bad. This is just, I'm going on a ride for a few minutes with my doctor. And so they made it look like a pirate ship where, you know, the student or the patient, the child gets to lay on the plank and, you know, they see the wheel and the water all around them. There's another one that's like a jungle. And the patients thought it was so fun. They wanted to do it again and again, even though they were actually getting a CT scan, right? And so that designer really identified the need, and the need was to make the patient feel more comfortable. The patient was uncomfortable because of the loud noises, but rather than eliminating the noise, which would have been a really big undertaking, they just made it fun. And so sometimes we have to think about how we can address a need in a new way. And that is a really, that example always speaks to me because, you know, I would have never thought, well, just, you know, put some stickers on it and make it look like a pirate ship. How many engineers and designers are thinking that? And so I think that's really important. So the next step that we talk about is the define step. And that's when we really think about what are the needs and who are we solving for. So to do that, we use a Mad Lib, we call it, a sentence that we kind of plug things into. So the user needs because a surprising insight so that they can, whatever the need is. So based on my conversation with Ioannis, maybe I would say Ioannis needs a way to teach his students design thinking because he recognizes the importance of human-centered designs so that he can teach more people how to think this way.
And
right?
also, Karine, it's so important to understand the need, and it's not every time so easy to see the need, the customer need. Most of times, a customer imagines something that she would like to have as a solution, but it's in the reality, it's so different. And how the designer will understand the customer need, how he will design a product that will meet that need, and finally what customer needs.
So you're asking how do we get the customer to kind of buy into the process, to be part of the.
Yeah.
So what we do is we bring them along for the ride and we make them part of the process. So we have a group of students that are a design thinking team, and they go into classrooms and into companies and do design thinking with clients. And what they do is they include the people they're designing for in the process. So they put them on teams together and collaborate with them so that as we walk through each step of the design thinking process, we try to break down that, that final solution mentality where you think, well, I just need this and I need someone else to tell me I need that, because that's how life works, because we have a consultant or an engineer or a designer that says like, this is the end product. But we found that when we walk people through the steps with us, they're much more open to thinking more broadly. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and in this way, prototyping give us a very good solution, because customer can feel the product, can use it. They can see if this product it's close to her needs, and students also better what they design, and they can touch it, they can feel it. It's not only a 3D representation on the screen. It's a real product, so they can use it. It's very important.
Yes.
The prototyping.
Yeah, the prototyping is so important. You are absolutely right. And we found that our students are so much better at design thinking than people that are out that have been working for years, because their brains work in a different way, right? They have less constraints on themselves that say, well, this is how it was done before, or that won't work because, you know, whatever. We try to remove as many of those limitations as possible when we're brainstorming and thinking, so that we can come up with some crazy, wacky, out of the box ideas and then figure out how to make them work. So, and yes.
Many times they can't understand how important it is to think out of the box.
Yes.
They don't understand that the box is their mind. So they have to go out from their mind and the way that they know how to think.
Yes. So the way we try to encourage that is we have like a few students that are trained in this process, and we put them in, we spread them amongst the groups. So they're the ones that say the really wild ideas so that other people aren't afraid to think out of the lines, you know? So if we have someone that's willing to say, you know, what if we just got in a spaceship and went to the moon, you know, for class tomorrow? Obviously, I can't take my students, put them in a spaceship tomorrow. That's not going to work. But because someone said that crazy idea, other people will feel comfortable saying other things that might not work, but maybe they will. You don't know.
Yeah. And the interview that you said before, it's very important that because from the interview, you can find out and you can think many solutions from your product, from your design.
Mm-hmm.
And the interview is very important. In the last semester, I tried to make interviews to my students, and in the beginning, they're not so ready to make a discussion in this way. But it's very important. The interview, for example, some questionnaires, it's very helpful, and the interviews, the personal interview, it's very important to have a real contact with your customer, with your team in design thinking process.
Yes.
You have a right on this.
So the image on the screen here is a computer mouse, something I think we probably are all familiar with. And this example comes from the gentleman who founded IDEO, which is a company that developed the first mouse. And they've also are the ones that developed this system, the design thinking process. And they were working with people on a computer and said, we need better keys on the keyboard to get from the top of the keyboard or the top of the monitor to the bottom of the monitor and move around. And they were trying to figure out how they were gonna make a better system on the keyboard to move around the monitor. And what they weren't thinking at that moment was, what if there was something totally different that helped them move from the top of the monitor to the bottom of the monitor? And that's how they developed a computer mouse. And so the mouse makes it easy, right, for all of us to move around a monitor. But before that existed, no one would have thought that we need this little thing with 2 buttons and a scrolling wheel, and it would just plug right into the computer. That was a totally foreign concept. So what they did was they looked at the need. They needed to move from the top of the screen to the bottom of the screen efficiently. And that's how they created the mouse, rather than working with what they had. So, you know, Johannes, to your point, we can't jump to a solution. If you have the solution already, the design thinking process will not work for you. It just won't. We come to it with a beginner's mind. And that's why I said that sometimes our students are even better at this than we are. But I've done this with students, you know, 10, 11-year-olds, and they're even better at it than my college students, because they come to it with a beginner's mind. We can't be experts and use all of our expert knowledge to solve the problem all the time. Sometimes we have to step outside of what has been done and what we know and think a totally different way. No constraints, the no limitations. We tell our students, you know, no budget, any amount of money is okay. You don't have to think about if it's legal or not legal. You don't have to worry if we've done it and tried it before, or if someone else is doing it. Any idea is okay. And we use the idea of yes and. So this is my undergraduate studies are in theater. And so in improvisation, we use yes and always. So someone presents you with an idea and you build from that. So if someone said, what if we go out and get a hamburger? And I said, yes, and let's go get a Coke with that, right? That's an easy, simple example. But if someone was creating a product and they presented an idea, you could build from that idea using yes and, rather than saying, no, that won't work. Maybe you can add a way that it would work with the yes and framework. So say like, yes, and also think about this, right? So you can build on each other's ideas. There was a study that was done with a pottery class. And so a teacher said to the class, this half of the classroom, you have the whole class to make the best pot you could possibly make. Make a pot that is perfect. You have the whole class. And the other half of the classroom, she said, make as many pots as you possibly can. You know, as fast as you can, make them, keep going and going until I tell you to stop. And when they looked at the products at the end, the half of the class that made as many pots as they possibly could was the group that had the best actual pots, because they practiced, they learned from their mistakes, they kept going, they tried something new, they kept practicing over and doing it again and again. And so building on their experience, they were able to create something that was better than the other students who simply just had to make something that was perfect. So when we ideate, we try to come up with as many ideas as we possibly can, over and over and over and over again. And sometimes we even give, you know, we do this with our students in our classes, we give prizes for the group that comes up with the most ideas. It doesn't matter if they're good or bad or crazy or impossible. More ideas, the better. And so to practice that, I'm gonna ask each of you to, I'm gonna give you 2 minutes. And what I'd like you to do is draw on a piece of paper circles. So just the size of a coin, 30 circles on the piece of paper. And then we are gonna see how many things we can draw from there. But first draw your 30 circles. So I'll give you a couple seconds to do that. Okay, so you get 2 minutes and make your circles into as many different things as you possibly can. So I'm going to give you one to get started with, and then you can go for the other 29. The first one, let's say, is the sun. So you could draw some kind of squiggly lines around it to make it look like the sun, right? So go ahead and try that out. Fill as many of the circles as you can with pictures. All right, so your time's up. How many people had more than 10? I'm gonna stop sharing here for a second so I can see you all. Did people have more than 10? Yeah, we have a couple. How about more than 15? All right. More than 20? Anyone?
Heavy.
Evie? Is that, how many did you have?
Who are you asking to? Sorry, I didn't. I have only 12.
I'm sorry, how many did you have?
I'm counting.
Okay.
13.
13, all right. We have 17 in the chat.
15. I had 15.
Costa said 15. All right, so you only filled up about half, most of you. This is hard, right? To keep going and going and going, but it is possible to fill the whole 30, and it's wild to see what all you can do. So go to here is an example. Are you seeing on the screen now all of the ideas that this particular person came up with, right? So pumpkins and ladybugs and balloons and a car, a ring, a turtle. So they don't have to connect, right? And keeping up with all of those ideas that sometimes don't connect to each other, that's okay. That's where we can find ways to bring ideas together. So this is just a fun warm-up activity. Sometimes in class we do them just to get people thinking differently at the start of class, because a lot of my classes I teach are late at night. You know, they start and our students are already tired and they are not focused. And so sometimes things like this, they help them kind of get focused and get their brain warmed up. So just an idea to share with you. The next step is prototype. And as we said, this is such an important step. It's so, so important. And prototyping looks different depending on what you're building. If it's an idea, if it's a computer app, or if it's a physical product, it really can look very, very different. We try to keep lots of supplies ready for our students. So cardboard and markers and pipe cleaners and all sorts of knickknacks that they can use to kind of build things. They also have, 3D printers and chloroplast, like things to build that they can use. So we try to give them options when it comes to prototyping. A lot of times when we're doing big events, we will just have them do storyboards, like a cartoon sort of, or a skit. We generally say, show us, don't tell us, show us your idea. But the great thing about design thinking in general and about the prototyping stage is that there's a bias towards action. We make fast, rapid prototypes that then can either work and we can make a better prototype, or they don't work. And if we only spend a little bit of time on it, it's easier to kind of let those ideas go. The ones that don't work, it's easier to kind of push them aside and see what else might work when we don't invest hours upon hours upon hours into our prototypes. So we try to do rapid prototypes first and refine from there. These are just two different ways. Obviously, you could prototype a plane, you could sketch it out, you could build it out of wood. But whatever, however you're creating your prototype, the next step is to test. And that's when you bring the users in and you say, here is our idea. what do you think, right? Tell us what we missed. Tell us what you wish you could see. We like to say, I like, I wish, what if. So if someone presents me with an idea, I might say, I really like the way you incorporated what I said when we talked into your idea, but I wish you had considered this one thing else. So I really like the PowerPoint slide that you made, but I wish that it didn't have green on it because I don't like the color green, you know, whatever. And then what if is more brainstorming, that's more ideation. What if we made it purple instead, because that is the color of my company. This picture here is something that I think is really cool. So the hospital in my city, they were building a new emergency room, and they rented a warehouse, like a big open space. And in that space, they built walls and rooms out of cardboard, and they made it to scale. So they built a 2-scale prototype, and then they brought their hospital beds in and the ambulances and every part of the hospital to make sure that the hospital beds could fit around the corners and that they had room to pass in the halls. And they really tried it in person using just cardboard before they actually had to build walls of bricks and you know, drywall and all of the things. It was much cheaper to learn from their mistakes in cardboard than it would be to do it, you know, to build an entire hospital and say, it would really work better if we had 4 more inches, or, you know, some more space in this hallway. So this is just an idea or example of how prototypes happen out in the world and how the test can happen in a real world scenario. So that's sort of the broad design thinking process. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we use it on our campus and in higher education. So while the design thinking process is 5 different steps, sometimes we use just pieces of it in our regular daily lives. So planning and brainstorming, that idea of yes and knowing who you're solving for, we try to always remind ourselves. So in my work, working with the community, it's not about what works best for me. It's about what works best for our neighbors and the people that are around us that we're trying to help. So trying to empathize with them and put myself in their shoes as the user, how can we brainstorm and plan for them? That idea of a beginner's mind, you know, in teaching, it's easy to think you have a plan for your class and to ask questions that you want your students to answer. But if you try to go the whole class and only ask questions that you don't already know the answer to, what might you learn from your students that is a totally different, that might take your class in a different way, that might engage them more? So that idea of a beginner's mind, if you already have the answer, there's no point in asking the question. And then we use design thinking quite often to encourage collaboration across our institution. So to bring different departments together, but also to bring our community and our institution together. We have 2 student initiatives that I just want to tell you a little bit about. The first is SAIL, the Student Academic Innovation Lab, SAIL. And that is where we bring students and faculty together to break down barriers, because we believe that everyone is equal. People are people, faculty members are people, students are people. And as people that value and believe in education, we want to learn from each other and with each other. And so while we recognize the faculty have so much knowledge about their discipline, we recognize we can continue to learn from the students as well. and learn more about our own discipline from the students. And so we try to work together. We use design thinking as a way to gain that empathy and understanding of one another and build prototypes and build solutions to bring those two groups together and learn from one another. So we do a lot of group projects where we bring students and faculty to work side by side. And then along with that is Unbound, which is the student design thinking team that I mentioned before. They call design thinking restoring natural genius, that we all have this creative mind that we just have to kind of unlock and think outside the box. But these students, they go into classes and they go into community organizations and businesses and do design thinking to address needs. So that can look very different depending on the organization, but we have a group in our community that was trying to build a house for young students to live in that didn't have, foster children, children without parents, and they were trying to build a house where they could learn in part of the house and they could live in part of the house, and trying to create space that they would want to hang out in and feel safe. And so our students worked with those clients to create a space that would be welcoming and safe for those the young kids that needed those resources. In class, that might look very different, but they can teach empathy interviewing, and they can teach the ideation and prototyping to come up with ideas. We worked with a sociology class that was trying to figure out how to address violence in our community and how to talk about that and how to get people to feel comfortable having uncomfortable conversations. And so this process really helped open up the doors to those conversations in a way that is hard to just walk up to someone and say, when did you feel uncomfortable? Tell me about a trauma. That's a hard way to start a trustful relationship. So using design thinking, they were able to help in those situations as well. If you're interested in learning more about design thinking, Creative Confidence is one of our favorite books. We use this as a text in our first year seminar. It was written by Tom and David Kelly. They are two folks that founded IDEO that I mentioned earlier and created this version of design thinking. They also started the D School at Stanford University. They have workshops and professional development opportunities always. That's on the West Coast of the United States. And they have a program for students called the University Innovation Fellows. And students from all over the world, college students, come to Stanford and they get a design thinking training and they commit to making change on their campus. And that is really what we are passionate about, making change on our campuses and in our universities and making higher education work for our students, because higher education has been very similar, for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And we want to have higher education for now and for the future. And so what does that need to look like? And the best people to ask, in our opinion, are the students. So teaching the students about design thinking and listening to them when they tell us their needs, that's how we're working towards that. But the University Innovation Fellows are a very interesting program, and I highly recommend that you look at that. So this is my email address. If you have any questions, I'm always happy to talk about this, but I'm happy to answer questions now also if anyone has any.
Thank you. Just a moment. So thank you very much, Karin, for the presentation. It was very inspiring. However, we have followed the last 3 days, all the seminars that they happened in our department here in HMU. I have a couple of questions, but I would like to leave the floor to the audience for any kind of questions that probably you will have. So the floor is first to the audience. If you have any questions, please raise your hand. Any questions, even illegal questions. Am I right? You know, this is the purpose of the design thinking, to think out of the box. So I will start my questions until, you know, okay. Thank you, Ioannis. The floor is to Ioannis Ditakis from Hellenic Mediterranean University and the Department of Mechanical Engineering. Thank you very much, Ioannis. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Karen, for your inspiring presentation. As Costa said, there is no stupid questions, so all questions are very useful in design thinking. So I would like to ask you if you have make any design thinking process to with people groups, with real people groups, in order to understand their needs for a specific design problem.
What type of groups? I'm sorry.
For example, if you have collect ideas from people, from real customers, for people from the society for a specific problem.
Yes. So, you know, within our institution, our admissions office, so the office that brings students to campus and gets them to become students, they came to us and said, we want more students from nearby, from the surrounding area to come to your college. And they didn't understand how to get them to come. And the first thing we asked was, when was the last time you talked to a student, right? Have you gone out and talked to these people that you want to come? And we found out that we needed to do more of that. We needed to go and talk to the user, as you're saying. So through that process, we used some of our students on the Unbound team to talk to people during informational sessions and open houses and visit days to learn about what they're looking for in a college. So our admissions and marketing people can make lots of pretty brochures and advertisements and all of that. But if those things aren't telling the answers to the questions that our students or the prospective students are asking, it doesn't matter how pretty the brochure is, right? So in that case, yes, we talked to the people that were coming to visit and tried to get a better understanding of what they were looking for, especially in a world where these students have been through COVID. You know, they have taken class online for a year or more and don't really have friends that are a couple years older that have been in college in a normal setting to guide them through that process. So we realized we needed to do a lot more work about what the college experience was and how we can introduce them to it. So that's one way we've used it. You know, our government, our city government in town also used design thinking. They worked with another group, but they used it to make the customer experience better. So when someone walks in the door of the town hall, how can the customer get where they need to be without being confused and frustrated and annoyed? How can they work? How can the city and the customer work together better? So there are examples both in government and the private sector and public that have used design thinking quite successfully in our town.
Thank you for your answer. And it is a great example how design thinking helps not only the design process, but how to organize your work, your process in your daily life. It's very important. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. We joke that design thinking, once you know it, you can't stop using it. It's just sort of there, and the way you think changes, which is a good thing, right? But once you know it, it's always part of you.
Okay, thank you.
George?
Yes, dear Karin, hello from Crete. It was indeed a very fruitful conversation and seminar you introduced to us. I focused on your interactive conversation with Mr. Didakis, and I'm just wondering if it is vain waiting to understand whether customers realize how designing works or not. I share the opinion that designers in any kind or any science design and create models and machines or whatever according to their beliefs, and they create the need. We must not follow or I don't think that designing derives from. We notice as many things we use. We hadn't realized that it was a need. The need was created in the long run. So I don't know if we must follow the guests' needs, the customers' needs, so as to meet the needs of them, or if we have, or if we are just one floor upper creating these needs. This was my opinion, and I'm very touched that you are from Pennsylvania, because my grandfather immigrated in Pennsylvania. He was a restaurateur there, and I have many relatives in your city, and it was one more reason why I wanted to listen to you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, yes. Well, I hope that you come and visit us as well in Pennsylvania, but I'm glad to hear you have family there. That's exciting. I agree with what you're saying. Sometimes it is a little bit of a challenge. We don't know if we're creating a need or finding the need, but that's where the empathy interview, I think, as the designer, you can hear the needs and design for them without creating something new, hopefully, but that is always a challenge. Yes.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm located in Turkey, and thank you for this nice presentation. I'm also using design thinking model actively in my classes, because I have a variety of students from various departments, and we have these sustainability development courses. So for them to be able to find those solutions, that's how we started. In fact, we use the design thinking model as a tool for them to apply to these solutions. But the problem that I'm having is, maybe you can, give me some websites, and I've been following the website that you mentioned, because when the courses were online, we were using the wallet design just to start them in the process. But of course, with the online, it was challenging. So we were trying to find like more creative ideas. And the challenges that I have is, one, I need to train the other instructors, because we're working in a team. So that is one challenge that I'm always facing. So I have to spend at least a day to train them so that they can run the course. Maybe you can have some ideas or suggestions about that to make the process manageable and easier. And the other thing is about finding topics, because like we have these courses that I mentioned, we have like 300 students. And if I put them in teams of 5, so I need to give them like, of course, some of the topics are the same, but I try to find at least 10 topics so they can pick from. But, and I search a lot of those websites that I can get ideas. I wish there is some kind of like, library where we can get ideas, not the solutions, but just ideas. Yeah. So yeah, those will be my questions to you, if you don't mind, if you have any sources to share. Thank you.
Yeah. I think my source is always the students. So we train our students, and then our students go into faculty's classes and teach the process. So rather than training lots of faculty members, we train the students to go in, and some of our students, this is their job on campus, is that they teach design thinking. So maybe they would be more willing to sit and get trained. I don't know, but we also ask them, what they're facing on campus or in the community, how, what are pressing topics in their lives that you can maybe use design thinking to help address. I don't know of any database online that can give ideas, but we try to think about, we talk about higher education a lot and how can we make higher education better? And from that one statement, you could have so many different, from the faculty perspective, from the student perspective, for non-traditional students, for students that are in a specific major. So you could kind of break them into groups in that way.
That's usually one question that I always ask, how we can make our campus more sustainable. And then they come up with ideas and then we distribute them. Yeah. But I like the idea of you propose training students. Of course, it's a public university, so we don't have a lot of budget to able to do that, like them volunteering, but I will look into that because I may find other ways to reward them. But I really like this idea, train the students so that like peer advising or peer-to-peer teaching that they can do. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Sure. Any other questions for us? Glossus?
Okay. I have one question. At the beginning, during the first step in empathy, you mentioned that you don't ask them their needs. Am I right?
Their needs.
Yeah. Why?
Because they might not know their needs. So they might know their situation, their problem, what they're dealing with, but knowing their needs is like jumping to the solution. So maybe the need is not, if you were to tell me, I need my students to be more alert and aware in class. Okay, so you might need that, but why are they not alert now? Maybe you need to think about go backwards from that, step back. What is making them not aware? So if you ask about experiences, then you can from there pull the needs out.
Yeah, but if they state their needs, then using the 5 whys or the 9 whys, you can do this, you can design it. So this is not a limited factor, in my opinion. To ask them, their needs and then start, the deeper and awareness of what does it cause this and how we can solve it.
Yeah, I mean, you can use the 9 or 5 whys to dig into that need, and you can probably get some good information there. But sometimes people don't know their needs. They know their situation, but they don't know what they need to get out of that situation or to resolve it.
And I have another question. No, a little bit more to reconfirm things. I think that, Elif has somehow answered my question. Like the teams, the most effective teams are those ones that they involve multidisciplinary students. Am I right?
Absolutely.
Because the ideas, it's always, we used to say that the best ideas are coming from those that they don't belong to the field. So some newcomers, they are not biased with the problems or the limitations of technology or pedagogy, and they just appear and they have bright ideas. Yeah. So this is the reason why it's better to have multidisciplinary teams. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, all right. So if this is the case, do we have any other questions? I mean, don't forget that this is what we are doing, what do we present in the Athena Soft Skills Academy is like also think about combination of things. Because always we think, oh, this is a new idea, how do we apply, but probably you know something else. And if you combine two or more things, it's even better. And the floor is to Elif.
Yeah, about what you said, plus I would like to add something about that interdisciplinary. That is true that in my groups of students, I put like in each group, we try to put students from different departments. Of course, it is hard to arrange the gender, and if we have international students, it's hard to arrange them because of the ratio, but we want to make sure that in each group there are different departments, so that there will be different brainstorming of ideas. Yeah.
Yes. And my experience is that always, makes a more robust discussion and an idea session. Particularly, we have a lot of engineering students and a lot of science students in our school, and so those students, they are great at building what is given or what has always been done, but sometimes that English major or that humanities person can really add so much to that. So I completely agree. We have the same experience. Yanis?
About Costa's comment, why you don't have to ask them needs. If you like to share a picture, share my screen with a picture to understand Costa's why you don't have to ask their needs. May I share my screen?
Yeah, Yanis, you can share your screen.
Kostas, this is the reason. If you look my screen now, can you see my screen?
Sorry, this is very good. Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
So, Kostas, it's very difficult for someone to know he needs to explain your his needs to you. So it's not so easy.
We're having trouble hearing you.
Can you hear me?
If you can speak your hands a little bit louder.
Okay. Yes, yes, my connection is not so good. I said before that it's not easy to understand, to say from the first time your needs. So you have to work on it. And from the first glance, it's not easy. You have to work hard. Probably my connection is poor.
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. The way that you depicted the things is actually the reality. But my question was like, if we can ask them, not if they have realized, if during this interview, during this empathy step, if we can ask them what are your needs, just to have an idea, and then through the whys to try to elaborate a little bit more with them. This was the question. But I totally agree with you. This is the situation, not only at the beginning, but also probably during the whole project. Different people, they realize different things, and they have different awareness of what's happening. But this is true. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So if this is the case, I would like to thank you once again for your participation, all of you. We are going to continue next Monday with another presentation. According to the program, it's me, and I will present you how to make oral presentations, fundamentally how to become professional bullshitters, but I'm not going to say this. How to make oral presentations In the meantime, if I will find, I'm speaking with a Spanish colleague in order to present storytelling techniques. If I will manage to invite him, and if he can make it next Monday, he will replace me. Otherwise, I will be the next speaker on this kind of seminar or this kind of lectures. I would like to thank Karin for this very nice lecture, all of you for your participation, and I will share with you the link in the YouTube channel in order to follow Karin's lecture, but also the 7 previous ones. So once again, thank you very much. Ευχαριστώ πολύ, as we used to say in Greek, and see you next Monday. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you all for having me.
Bye.
Thank you, Kostas, and happy birthday, Kostas.